I'd survived the Great Depression, 2 wars, and 53 years of marriage to Margaret O'Sullivan, a woman who could silence a room with one raised eyebrow. But nothing had prepared me for the words that came out of my daughter's mouth that Tuesday evening, right between the pot roast and the apple pie. "You can take the guest room, Dad, or move out." The fork slipped from my hand, clattering against Margaret's good china, the plates she'd made me promise to give to Caroline someday. Around the table, time seemed to freeze. My son-in-law Tom suddenly found his mashed potatoes fascinating. My grandchildren, Emma and Jack, sat wide-eyed, looking between their mother and me like spectators at a tennis match. I'm Patrick O'Sullivan, 78 years old, and I'd been living in what I still thought of as my house for the past 42 years. Margaret and I had bought this 3-bedroom colonial in 1982 with money we'd saved penny by penny. We'd raised Caroline here, hung every picture on these walls, planted the oak tree in the backyard that now shaded half the lawn. When Margaret passed 18 months ago, my heart had gone with her into that cold ground. Caroline had insisted I shouldn't be alone. "Move in with us, Dad," she'd said, tears streaming down her face at the funeral. "We have plenty of room." What she'd really meant, I realized now, was that she had plenty of room in my house. The house I'd signed over to her 5 years ago when some financial advisor convinced me it would be better for estate planning. "Caroline," I said slowly, setting down my water glass with the careful precision of a man trying not to explode. "This is my home." "Was your home, Dad?" Her voice had that edge to it, the same tone she'd used at 16 when arguing for a later curfew. "Legally, it's been mine for 5 years, and honestly, I can't do this anymore." "Can't do what, exactly?" "This," she gestured around the table, her face flushing. "You've taken over everything. The whole house revolves around you. Your show's on TV at 6 o'clock sharp. Your newspapers spread all over the kitchen table every morning. Your medications lined up on my counter. Your constant opinions about how Tom should maintain the yard, how I should discipline the kids, what we should eat for dinner." Tom shifted uncomfortably, still studying those potatoes like they held the secrets of the universe. "I raised you in this house," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "I think I've earned the right to." "To what? To treat us like we're living in your space instead of you living in ours?" Caroline's eyes glistened, but she didn't back down. "Mom's been gone for 1.5 years, Dad. We've tried, we've really tried, but you won't let us live our own lives." 11-year-old Emma spoke up then, her voice small. "Grandpa, you did tell Mom she was a bad parent for letting me quit soccer." My chest tightened. "That's not. I was just saying that in my day, we didn't let children quit things when they got hard." "See," Caroline threw up her hands. "In your day, but this isn't your day anymore, Dad. It's ours, and we need our home back." I looked at 9-year-old Jack, hopping for an ally, but he was staring at his lap. Even he knew I'd gone too far last week when I'd told him he spent too much time on video games and not enough time outside doing real kid things. The truth settled over me like a heavy blanket. I'd been so lost without Margaret that I'd tried to recreate the life we'd had, the routines, the order, the sense of control. But I'd been recreating it in someone else's home, with someone else's family, forcing them all to play parts in a production they'd never auditioned for. "The guest room is nice, Dad," Tom finally spoke, his voice gentle. "We cleaned it out, painted it. You'd have your own space, your own bathroom, privacy. But," he glanced at Caroline, "you'd also need to respect that you're a guest in our home, our rules, our schedule, our way of doing things." A guest in the house where I'd taught Caroline to ride a bike, where Margaret and I had danced in the kitchen on our anniversary, where I'd sat up countless nights worrying about mortgage payments and college tuition. "And if I can't do that?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Caroline's expression softened slightly. "There's a senior living community about 20 minutes from here, Maple Ridge. It's really nice, Dad. Independent living, lots of activities, people your own age. You could make friends, have your own apartment, your own life." My own life. As if the life I wanted, the one with Margaret in this house, with purpose and meaning, was still an option. "I need to think," I said, pushing back from the table. I walked out into the backyard, stood under that oak tree I'd planted as a sapling. The evening air was cool, crickets starting their nightly symphony. This yard had seemed so big when we'd moved in. Now it felt small, contained, like everything else in my world. Margaret would have known what to do. She always did. She would have seen this coming months ago and steered me away from this confrontation with her particular brand of firm kindness. But Margaret was gone, and I was still here, clinging to a past I couldn't resurrect and refusing to acknowledge a present I didn't want. I thought about Emma's face when I'd criticized Caroline's parenting, Jack's slumped shoulders when I'd lectured him about video games, Tom's constant tiptoeing around me, afraid to make decisions in his own home, Caroline's exhaustion, trying to grieve her mother while managing her overbearing father. I'd been so focused on what I'd lost that I hadn't seen what I was destroying. The back door opened and Caroline came out, wrapping a cardigan around herself. We stood in silence for a moment. "I loved your mother more than life itself," I said finally. "When she died, I didn't know how to be a person anymore. I only knew how to be her husband. Being in this house, keeping things the way they were, it was the only way I could still feel close to her." "I know, Dad," Caroline's voice cracked. "I miss her too, every single day. But I've made you all miserable in the process." She didn't deny it. "We want you in our lives. Emma and Jack love you, but the you who criticizes everything and tries to control everything, that's not the grandfather they need. It's not the father I need." I turned to look at her, really look at her. She was 42 now, a grown woman with her own family, her own life. When had that happened? Somewhere between my grief and my stubbornness, I'd stopped seeing her as anything but the little girl I'd once protected. "Tell me about Maple Ridge," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. "Really? Really?" But I held up a hand. "I want to visit first, and I need time to pack, to say goodbye to this place properly." "Of course." She moved closer, taking my hand like she used to when she was small. "Dad, this doesn't mean we don't love you." I know, and I did, finally. Love wasn't letting me stay in the past. Love was pushing me toward a future, even when I didn't want to go. 3 months later, I sat in my one-bedroom apartment at Maple Ridge, looking at photos of Margaret while a pot of coffee brewed. In an hour, I'd head down to join a woodworking class. Tomorrow, I had a poker game with 3 other widowers who'd become unlikely friends. I visited Caroline's house. I'd finally stopped thinking of it as mine every Sunday for dinner. I'd learned to bite my tongue, to offer support instead of criticism, to be a grandfather instead of a patriarch. Was it the life I'd imagined? No. Was it the life I wanted? Some days yes, some days no. But it was a life, mine, new, different, and slowly, painfully, I was learning that different didn't have to mean wrong. Margaret would have been proud.